All right. Good morning, Doug. We're here with another viewer Q&A, but we got to address a couple of things that weren't asked in the questions first because they're just on our mind. Let's start with what's happening in Martha's Vineyard these days.
Yeah, where are the inquiring minds in our audience? This Martha's Vineyard thing is absolutely wonderful. It is so rich. It was so bold. I guess it was that governor in Florida shipped 50 people by private plane up there and dumped them in Martha's Vineyard, which is wonderful. But then it turns out after 24 hours, the National Guard, I heard it was 125 guardsmen, have transplanted them to a guard base in someplace in Cape Cod. I don't know. But this is great. You got to keep it up. You got to ship not just 50, but you got to ship 500 of them, or maybe 5,000. And listen, what happened to diversity? These are all Venezuelans. Well, no wonder there wasn't enough diversity. That's why it didn't work. You got to get El Salvadorians that are members of a certain social group, and there were some kids in this Venezuelan group. I prefer that they ship up military-age young males.
Right.
Nothing like having young unmarried males up there, hundreds of them. That would be great. So you get them from El Salvador that are members of MS-13, preferably.
Well, all those Haitians, remember they were on the border like 6 or 8 months ago, right? So there was thousands of Haitians. So it mixed up with some Haitians, I think, too.
Absolutely. Some Haitians got a little bit of language diversity there, not just Spanish speakers.
Some French. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and let's go to Nigeria. That's where the major migration to Europe is going to be, and Somalia too. I mean, what are those guys that used to be pirates doing? Just sitting around on the shore? They belong in Cape Cod.
Well, they're suited for like beachfront property anyway, right? So on the island there with access to luxury boats, it'd be good for them.
They'll know exactly what to do with luxury boats. So I hope this doesn't blow over. Some way DeSantis is going to be punished for his boldness.
Yeah, I saw somebody is requesting the DOJ file charges in violation of some code which involves the transportation of undocumented aliens across state lines.
Right, or kidnapping. I heard that they were going to try that too. This is all completely insane. But it's just, just the beginning of what's to come. Because there's still millions of people per year at the current rate flowing across the border. And I ask myself, exactly, what are these people? I understand that the government gives them credit cards and cell phones and puts them up someplace, but a lot of them are going to wind up sleeping on the street. Where do you put a couple of million people that don't know anything about anything? What do you do with these people? Where do they go? What do they do?
My understanding is that DHS has partnered with a bunch of NGOs and funds those NGOs essentially to relocate them, to take them to specific areas of the country and to arrange some basic housing for them. I mean, we know they use hotels and stuff like that in different places. We know that's been done. But yeah, it seems like a monumental task to move these people, distribute them across the country, and then put them, make it so that they aren't living on the streets, which it doesn't seem like they are living on the streets, honestly. The homeless people I see are not them.
Well, it's such a sham that a decent human being, and I'm sure many of these people are decent human beings, so forget about that, but wants to immigrate to the US, you got to pay thousands of dollars for an immigration lawyer to kosher it up with the government and jump through all kinds of hoops. But here, these people basically come on in and live off the fat of the land. What the hell's going on here? Why isn't the average American up in arms saying, wait a minute, what's going on? Millions of people that I've got to pay for these people, actively pay for them. And of course, the liberals all say, well, we had massive waves of Irish and Italians and East Europeans in the last, well, yeah, that's right, but they all paid their own way. So you could argue that they are actually real refugees or opportunity seekers.
Right. Well, they either paid their own way or they signed themselves into indentured servitude. right? Where they were basically temporary slaves to fund their trip over and had various jobs when they arrived. That's how my family got here as indentured servants.
Yeah. Well, these people on their government cell phones are undoubtedly calling their friends all over the world saying, hey, what's the matter with you staying there, you know, in a grass hut eating worms? You can come up here and get all the stuff I'm getting. That's exactly what's going to go on. And
Yep.
you know what? If I was a poor third worlder,
I'd be one of them.
in a moment, I mean, somehow I would try to get to that border.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. One of the things that bothers me about the whole thing, I mean, I feel the Schadenfreude when I saw that DeSantis did that. That made me happy. And then at the same time, Texas sent a couple busloads of people and dropped them off right outside of the Naval Observatory, which is the VP's house, which I thought that was also gave me a little delight. As I thought more about it, and I'm feeling glee about it. I'm feeling true Schadenfreude seeing this. It feels good. It feels like stick it to the man kind of thing. But at the same time, it reminded me of the weakness of the Republicans, of the right. And these people, 24 hours on the ground in Cape Cod, call in the National Guard and get those people the hell out of their town. Why is the National Guard not deployed across all these border states to block this from happening altogether? Why are they doing nothing about it? Except for, honestly, it's rhetoric. It's like tough talk. They're publicity stunts, really. Unless they send 5,000 people like you were suggesting to Martha's Vineyard, which I think they definitely should. That'll make a point in a different way. I mean, that's like a subversive almost battle, right? I mean, if they sent that many of them, but if they send 50, it's just a political stunt, it seems to me.
Just a political, yes. And these millions of people, and now that several million have succeeded in the last year, it guarantees that there are going to be many, many millions more that are going to do it for the same reasons. The only people that would protest against this are MAGA Republicans. The average Republican is just a whipped dog who rolls over and wets himself when he gets any opposition. But it's the MAGA Republicans. But wait a minute, they're domestic terrorists. So
Convenient, huh?
yeah, it is. This is an actual color revolution going on here in the US, a color revolution like we had in North Africa 10 years ago or in the Ukraine a few years ago. This is an actual overthrow of traditional society in the US. And I don't see how it's going to get better. Just, I'll make a prediction now. Despite the fact that a lot of MAGA Republicans and Democrats that have finally gotten pissed off enough, I think that one way or the other, the Democrats are going to win the midterm elections. I hate to make that prediction, but it just seems to me that these Bolsheviks are not going to want to give up the reins of power, which they have right now. We'll see. I hope I'm dead wrong about all this stuff, but it doesn't seem that way to me.
No, I think that's justified given the thing that I just mentioned, which is that the Democrats there are a lot of rhetoric, but they are also action. And so because like people who love Trump, and I know that we have lots of viewers who think Trump is like some patron saint of some kind, but people who love him, he was in charge for 4 years and did almost nothing. He couldn't get his wall built. He couldn't fire the people he hired that were prosecuting him. He couldn't do any of that. But as soon as Biden takes over, I mean, they've been able to make, in their eyes, magic happen. I mean, they know how to use the levers of power.
And in the last 2 years, they've cemented themselves in office. Even if the Jacobins lose the midterms, the people that are still in the administrative agencies are going to cement themselves further in power. I don't think you can stop it at this point.
Yeah. And also, I have to say, the Republicans are even, at least those that are represented in the Senate and in Congress, they're not the opposition. They're not the opposition because for all the terrible things that are going on right now, you hear almost nothing from them about anything. You hear almost nothing. And it's been this way, for the whole time. There are some notable exceptions, but for the most part, you hear nothing. And even I would make an argument that you have one of the people who I have the least, who I think is the most repulsive member of the Senate is Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham, he's just a terrible person, right? He's just
in every way.
He's a statist. He loves war. He's just a bad guy. And he came out and made a big deal that he's trying to push through Congress this bill which would ban abortion after 15 weeks. And why is he doing that? The reason why he's doing it is he's trying to make sure to create a polarizing issue that is going to make sure people go, well, we cannot let the Republicans win Congress or they're going to do this. Why is he doing it right now? Not to help Republicans. This doesn't help them at all. Most people are honestly ambivalent about abortion.
Oh, and this whole brouhaha from before was just making abortion determined by the states. It wasn't illegalizing it. It was just making it a state thing.
Right. So the Republican wants more federal power in there to basically restrict these at a time that is designed to make it more divisive, to increase the stakes in the minds of those that might be middle of the road, to maybe sway some of them to vote Democrat instead of Republican. That's why he's doing it. So this is your Republican advocate in the Senate, which is why you just forget about these people. They aren't on your side.
Yes, and that would certainly include that weak little turtle, Mitch McConnell.
Oh,
stands for absolutely nothing, except being a warmonger, having visited the Ukraine. And
they all like war, Doug. It seems like all of them, maybe except for Rand Paul. It seems like everyone is into war. If it's their side, they're into war. If it's not their side, then they resist it. But basically, they're all supporters of war.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
disgusting.
Yeah, it really is. And I assume there are a few decent people in the Republican Party that are in office, but they've got to be, when you're surrounded by 500 people that are actively against you and their staffers, it is intimidating. It's like being the only one in a mob that doesn't want to join a lynching. You become quiescent. And so if there are any decent Republicans in Congress, they really don't want to say anything just because the peer pressure is too much.
Yeah, the reason this has gotten as bad as it is because there aren't enough people that have any testicular fortitude at all. Like they just have no balls. Everyone's been unmanned and is unwilling to do stuff. Actually, there's a question about books that we'll get to later, but I'm reading a book, just started this morning, so I can't just say it's great, but you might like it. Let's see if I can show you. It's called American Insurgents, American Patriots, and it's a kind of a populist history of the American Revolution. Instead of saying the story that we're told, of course, is that from the perspective of Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton and all that, but they were the elites. They played a role. It was kind of a grassroots thing where you had a lot of fairly recent 1 or 2 generation immigrants who were working the land. They were farmers in small communities who basically got to a point where they drew a line in the sand and decided that they were not going to accept the policies of the British. And so they were labeled insurgents. They were labeled insurgents. One of the things they make early on in this book, like I said, I've only read it for about half an hour, 45 minutes today so far. But they say that to trivialize the grievances of these folks, at least the people they called the middlings, the middle people, right, in America, to trivialize it and say it was because it says, those who today torture the revolutionary record by trying to transform these people into partisans for narrow and selfish causes, as if the sole purpose of the revolution was the avoidance of taxation, insult the memory of those who once imagined a more just and equitable structure of government. He talks also this is one of the most creative periods in American political history because at that point, they didn't believe that anyone even had the right to serve in office. And then all of a sudden you had a whole new bunch of people that were serving in local councils and all that. But they engaged in what people consider terroristic activities for sure, and lots of intimidation of people, lots of abuse of people, some assassinations. And anyway, I find it very interesting so far because it's totally different than the noble, sanitized version of revolution that we think of as what happened in America in the past.
Yes, it would have been an awful time to be in the U.S. and a dangerous time. We may be coming up on that now again. We'll have to see.
Maybe come on. But the thing is that those guys, there was a lot of testosterone in that group. What they did was a lot of testosterone. I'm just not sure because you asked earlier. You said, why aren't people up in arms about what's happening with the immigration? But we could have said the same thing about all the other terrible things that have been done to the American people over the last couple of years. No one does anything.
Like the 87,000 new IRS agents that are going to be hired.
or all the businesses
Where
shut
are the
down.
protests? Where's the outrage? Is everybody on Prozac and Zoloft?
Yeah, or low T somehow. I don't know. It's interesting. Surprising.
Yes. Yes, that's true. I do hear these stories about that as well as an actual medical phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah. Some stat I heard was that the average 20-year-old has the same testosterone that a typical 60-year-old had 40 years ago.
Hmm. Perhaps it comes from sitting in the basement playing on his electronic device all day. And perhaps it's added to by the fact that he is, with good reason, afraid to date a girl, presuming she is not actually hates males herself, because he might get sued or God knows what. The whole society is coming apart at
It
the
is.
seam.
Yeah. One last thing before we get into questions is that there's this meme that goes around. I've seen it several times where basically they take these posts from women, usually on Instagram, who say, someone asked me out for a date and I said no, but he gave up too easy. You know, he should ask me again. Doesn't he know that that I wanted to try harder and then I would have said yes? But you're told as a man, definitely no means absolutely no. You have to completely, like, you can't be tenacious in trying to get a woman to date you. Jesus, what do these people think this is?
It is actually dangerous. And on the other hand, you get the aggressive female that goes after men. And, I was suspicious of those women as well.
Always have been as well. It's strange that happens. Yep, I agree. All right. Well, we can get into these questions, Doug, if you're ready to go. First one
Yeah.
is, what are your thoughts on KYC? That's know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering paperwork when creating an offshore company or opening a bank account or a whole bunch of other things. Question is, how does one maintain privacy in a world that requires those things?
Well, little forgotten fact is that it wasn't so long ago that KYC didn't exist. You went to a bank or a broker or whoever, and if he liked you or if he didn't care, I mean, it's a financial transaction, you open an account. Listen, you don't want to be BFFs, to use another three-letter symbol. You don't want to be best friends forever with your banker. You just want a damned account. But now opening an account with any financial institution is like pulling teeth and disclosing everything about yourself. It's horrible. Answer your question, how do you get around this? Well, you actually can't get around it these days. I think all of the world's financial institutions have totally knuckled under to this idea of money laundering, which is another artificial crime that was created from out of nowhere 2 generations ago. It didn't exist before. I don't know when it's going to go away. If it's not going to go away before we have a revolution and the current financial system is overturned.
Yeah. Yeah. There was maybe a bit of privacy still available before FACTA came out. And then once FACTA came out, that essentially subjected all financial institutions that used the dollar system, that they had to, if they had any American clients, they had to comply with. And there's a whole, and know your customer and anti-money laundering are all parts of it. It just became totally uneconomic for any bank to do business with you.
Way too dangerous for any financial institution to flout that law. The only way you can get around it is dethroning the dollar, where you don't have to, and indeed people don't want to use the dollar. Then perhaps that will start going away as some entrepreneurial financial institutions realize they're no longer under the thumb of the US. But until then, you really can't get around it. You're not going to find a financial institution that you can make it worth their while to violate the law.
Yep.
Not really, no.
Okay. What's the best way to short the overall market and economy in order to profit from the coming depression?
Yeah, well, that's a risky question to answer because look, a depression is a period of time when most people's standard of living drops significantly. Now, does that mean, well, the stock market should go down? But wait a minute, maybe the stock market won't go down that much. maybe just the dollar is going to go down. So the real value of the stock market relative to real goods drops significantly, but the Dow still stays at 30,000 or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to play this game. And you can buy one of these ETFs that's a short ETF. A better idea is to get a long ETF and go short yourself, because the short ETF is probably doing things in the futures market, which is dangerous and incurring extra costs. So instead of getting into a short ETF, I would use a long ETF and go short. But this is too complicated for most people. So
It is, and it doesn't always work. Like when the pandemic
no,
hit, I shorted junk bonds. I shorted the ETF. Okay. And the trade was working incredibly well. And then the Fed started buying it. So I was on the other side trade to the Fed. Guess what? I got out of the trade immediately when that happened. I mean, it's crazy. It didn't matter what I was right.
The Fed does not want the financial system to collapse. So they'll do anything they can in the way of printing money and buying assets to keep the financial market from imploding. So it's tough. What do I do personally? It's play money for me. I don't use a lot of money. It's six figures, but in the big scheme of things, it's not a lot. I basically sell options mainly on the NASDAQ, sell calls on 30-year bond. That's what I do. Because as I've explained many times before, I think these things are generally going to go down in value, but I don't want to fight the Fed. So by selling options, which is too dangerous for most people, and you need too large a bankroll to really even be able to do it. But I sell options because I don't have to be really right, which you have to be when you buy options. I just have to be not terribly wrong within the next week or two, because I always sell the short-term year buys.
Right. That's what I should have done. Okay. Next question. What if we're wrong and there's no doom? What if we're going to live in a brave? It's possible, I guess.
Oh,
The aliens, we talked about that. So what if there's no doom? What if we're going to live in a brave new world where climate change is real, a new carbon credit market fuels the U.S. economy? Sounds like Marin Katuza talking here, and leads to unexpected growth and allows us to pay off all our national debts.
yeah. Well, listen, I don't pray, but if I did pray, I would pray to Jesus or Yahweh or Allah or Zeus or Odin, any god I could find. Please, God, make that wish come true. I'm not looking forward to the Greater Depression. I'm not looking forward to political and social turmoil in the US. Absolutely not. It's going to be unpleasant and inconvenient. So I'm not hoping for this stuff at all. What was the question again?
What if we're wrong? What if there's no doom? That's
What if we're wrong? Maybe friendly aliens will, in fact, land on the roof of the White House and present us with a magic technology that will kiss everything and make it better. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe some other kind of magic will happen. Yeah, sure. But
Let's
I'm
hope so.
not going to plan my life around it because it's kind of a long shot.
Right. But at the same time, though, thinking from a doom lens is that I think you should prepare. We talked about preparing last time, like you should prepare. But what I've tried to do, the decision that Jane and I came to was when we came to our hypothesis about it, exactly what's happening in the direction it was going to go, which still is on track, was that we wanted to do things that where our life would be better by the massive change we were making, regardless of what happens. You don't necessarily buy one of those former nuclear missile silos in South Dakota and,
Yeah.
stock it full of stuff, right?
No, you're quite correct, Matt. And your approach is by far the most intelligent one. Do something that is likely to insulate you from tough times, but will improve your current standard of living and enjoyment of life in the meantime.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And that's the path that I'm trying to follow as well.
Okay.
I guess that's the answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the answer. Okay, next question. Since there are no reporting requirements to the IRS for sales of gold eagles, and you can buy gold with Bitcoin, is this a way to break the tracking of Bitcoin to cash?
You know more about that than I do as far as what can or can't be done to maintain privacy with Bitcoin. This thing with the Eagles, they can change that in a New York second.
Yeah, and I think they will. And you also have to find a buyer who's willing to accept Bitcoin in exchange for the gold they have. The people who are big gold bugs are usually not the same, and gold dealers are not probably the same people who are interested in holding Bitcoin. So I'm not, and ultimately they got to move it to cash and explain it. So I don't know. I mean, theoretically, on a one-to-one basis, you could go this way, but I don't think there's a way to avoid. There's no privacy in the world, is the way I look at it. You have to assume there's no privacy. I think you have to, because if you're assuming privacy and then doing something that you know that these new 87,000 IRS agents are going to have an issue with, that's a big risk.
Yeah, I remember years ago, and by years I mean about 30 years ago, Larry Ellison, who runs what's
Oracle.
that giant? Yes, Oracle. And I remember he made a public pronouncement that was widely dispersed. He said, "Forget about privacy. Privacy doesn't exist today." That was 30 years ago, and it's much, much more the case today.
Okay. What, do you have any thoughts on Pierre Poilievre? I can't know if I'm not sure I'm not pronouncing his last name right, but he's the right-leaning leader in Canada.
Yes, I'd have to look at his name. It's pronounced in the standard. If I can remember his last name, he's just,
Poilievre. I don't know French. I can't.
I have to see it written, but it's pronounced in a conventional French way if you have the spelling. But I don't have the spelling because this guy actually just came to my attention a couple of days ago when I saw a YouTube of him giving a lecture in Parliament about sound money, which was encouraging.
It was impressive.
He's very libertarian leaning, but what are the chances that he's actually going to grab the reins of power in Ottawa? I'd say they're slim because Trudeau has the reins of power and he's going to do everything possible to keep them. I'm glad he's out there. I don't know how radical or how sound he is, but hey, it's nice. I'm sure I'd support him, but insofar as I'd support any politician, because
Exactly. His presentation on money was demonstrated that he knows a hell of a lot more about money than almost everybody who is in elected office in the Americas in general, not just in Canada.
yeah, I saw the YouTube of that speech. I guess we're both referring to the same thing. And to me, it just showed the nature of political life in Canada, even more so than the US, where all the conservatives that are applauding him are all wearing these idiotic masks while he's giving his speech.
I know.
So, this is, I'm sure these whip dogs didn't even see the contradiction, the cognitive dissonance that they were created about clapping to a speech on freedom and wearing their silly masks.
I know. It's hilarious, really. Okay. And now that across the pond, why is the royal family still worshipped even in 2022? Why hasn't it been abolished?
I think it's all about Queen Elizabeth, who is now dead, quite frankly, because got to recall that the Europeans still have royal families. I may stand to be corrected, in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium. And it wasn't so long ago that there was a German royal family, the Kaiser. I don't know whatever happened to the Kaiser after he left office in 1918. And the Italians still have remnants of a royal family, which could be resuscitated. And Spain does. I think Spain still got it.
Spain does.
Got
And Monaco.
Yeah, Monaco. So people must like royalty. They must like the symbolism of it or whatnot. But I'm not a fan of royalty. Even if it's the nicest and sweetest royal in the world, they're just the descendants of successful thugs and murderers that took over the country. and then legitimized themselves and gussied it up with silk and all this kind of nonsense. So, getting back to the royal family, you got to remember that Queen Elizabeth was in office as an adult, as the queen for 70 years. She's been around as an adult for almost a third of the length of time the United States as a country has been here.
Yeah.
So she's like a living tradition. And she's never been involved in a scandal or setting her foot wrong. Always appeared to be, well, conventional, but still basically kind of a decent human being, not like her goofy grandson, Harry, or her horrible new king, Prince Charles. I mean, for all I know, it's been alleged he's a pedophile, but who knows? He's got all the wrong political views. He's a horrible person.
Yeah.
Well,
Good buddies with Klaus Schwab.
good
right?
buddies with Klaus. The only good thing I can say about Charles is he was a decent polo player.
Well, that's something. Why?
Yeah.
Didn't the last two King Charles not work out well for anybody?
Yes, and that's that whole thing in the 1600s with Cromwell and beheading Charles. It was Charles. Who got beheaded? I think it was Charles the First that got beheaded. The 1600s. Charles first, Charles second, James first, James the second. I can't remember who's on first, quite frankly.
And it's a good thing. This is not information you'd like to take up brain space to remember.
Oh, no. Why do people like these royal families? I think that at this point, now that Elizabeth is dead and they have a twerp as king, that the royal family is going to lose prestige and the institution will go downhill rapidly.
Okay. Doug, how do you overcome the analysis paralysis of the unknown? This person specifically says they're considering leaving a secure job that allows decent income and cash flow, but leaving that for an occupation or a startup that you're more passionate about. There's so many unknowns in that process. So how generally do you deal with analysis paralysis?
Well, you have to answer this one perhaps better than I do, Matt, because you are a serial entrepreneur. But my answer to that question would be, I like to refer to the wisdom of those who have gone before. And I'm a fan of Davy Crockett, not just because I saw the Walt Disney thing in the 50s with the coonskin cat and all that type of thing, but it's true that Davy actually said, be sure you're right, then go ahead. Well, that's pretty obvious advice, but it's pretty good advice too. So perhaps when you're talking about analysis paralysis, perhaps you have not analyzed this new business really thoroughly. Like take the 9 Ps that I have that I like to use for buying into speculative stocks or any kind of stocks, frankly, and apply them to your own business. Perhaps you're just playing Hamlet. Should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? But you're not actually suffering analysis paralysis. Maybe you're not analyzing it really thoroughly, at which point you'd say, no, that was actually a bad idea. Good to have ideas, but that one didn't work out. So I think you ought to go back to the drawing board and seriously analyze the thing like Warren Buffett would do, or somebody like that.
Yeah,
And that'll break the paralysis.
I think you're right. When I've coached other entrepreneurs, one of the biggest things I told them is that when you need to do something, the answer is obvious. You know what you need to do. Very clear to you. It's because you've gathered enough information. You understand the repercussions. You understand the downside of not acting. So I think I do think the answer is obvious. And then the other thing I was just thinking of as you were talking about that was our mutual friend Mark Ford wrote a book called The Reluctant Entrepreneur, I think. And his whole idea was that you should be reluctant about being an entrepreneur. It's not what you think it is. They work way harder for way less for a long time, and then maybe it works out. That's kind of how it goes. So what he suggested is that you should moonlight, that you should use your extra hours to start. And then once it takes off, once your business thing takes off, it'll be, again, a no-brainer for you because the the math's so obvious. It's not about passion. It's like doing the work, but also it doesn't make sense for you to work. It's too expensive for you to work because all you're losing by having this job. I think it's called The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Mark Ford.
But then he wrote another book called Ready, Fire, Aim.
Yes.
That would seem on the surface to be a jump off the deep end kind of
Yeah.
approach. Ready, fire, aim.
I think specifically he wasn't necessarily talking about entrepreneurship only in that. He was just talking about making decisions. I think he was addressing analysis paralysis, though, is that take some action. So you're ready. So take some action. That's the firing. And then you aim and that's you recalibrate. This is why I think the part-time entrepreneur thing works, is because you do it and then you go say what's working, what's not working. You make adjustments along the way, and then you improve your process essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Let's say you're working successfully at your whatever job, 8 hours a day or whatever. Well, I think you're just going to have to work harder. You're going to have 2 jobs. Lots of people on their way up have 2 jobs. And you can take it on a gradient that way, as opposed to jumping off the deep end and then finding, oh my God, I don't know how to swim.
Exactly. And by the way, the people who work 8 hours a day have no clue what being an entrepreneur is, because you work every day, basically all the hours you can. And people ask me when I was like 30, they asked me how many hours a week I worked. I would say all of them. I never took a vacation for 10 years, never any vacation, never a weekend off. A Sunday was the same as a Tuesday, made no difference. Most people don't want that. They have this ideal, they have this version of what it means to be an entrepreneur that is total bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Life is too comfortable for them now, and they don't want to give up any of their. Yeah, exactly right. My feeling has always been almost everybody get what they deserve. And
Yeah, that's true.
if you're successful, it's probably because you worked harder and you worked longer and you worked smarter than the other guys that don't have what you want.
Right.
But those other people almost always suffer from envy. I mean, they want what you have, they want you to give it to them. But what's starting to rule as a meme in the United States and the world is not so much jealousy. Hey, you got that nice car. I'd like one too. Can you give it to me? It's envy, which is different than jealousy, because it says, you have it, I want it, but if I can't get it, I'm going to destroy it and make sure you don't have it either.
Exactly. That is the dominant theme today. I agree.
It really is. That's what BLM and Antifa, and for that matter, the Democratic Party at this point are all about.
Yep. Equalize the population by knocking the top part down several notches rather than lifting people up. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Doug, if mass chaos or famine breaks out, do you worry about peaceful places like Uruguay getting invaded?
Getting invaded. Nobody is going to invade Uruguay. I mean, the Argentines aren't going to invade it. Well, who can say what some psychotic that runs the Argentine government will do? You can't predict that. Or maybe there will be some casus belli from the Brazilians, but it's an ideal and innocuous bumper state between the two of them. Chances of it being invaded by either of those two or anybody else are very, very low. Was that a question directed to Uruguay in particular?
Well, he said peaceful places, and he put in brackets Uruguay and the Falkland Islands. I don't know why he used that.
Oh,
Which has been invaded.
yeah. I mean, who can tell with this national psychosis that they have in Argentina, where they've been convinced the Falklands are ours, or the Malvinas, what they call them. You've got to be careful in the wrong company in Argentina calling the Falklands by their correct name. These things are unpredictable, but I think the chances are better that instead of the Falklands being invaded by Argentina, I think there's probably a better chance that Argentina, over the next 100 years, is going to break up into 2 or more countries. That's what I think. And that's true of so many countries in Latin America, and especially in Africa, and in Europe too. So it's I don't worry too much about invasions. Actually, invasions, I don't know if we talked about this the other day or not,
No.
but invasions are really bad, but they're not nearly as bad as civil wars, because in an invasion, this foreigner, you know who he is, and you drive him away and he'll go home and you still got your place. But a civil war, it's your next door neighbor. He's already at home. So now you got to kill him. I mean, civil wars are much worse than wars of invasion. And I think in the future, civil wars which are wars where two or more groups are trying to get control of the government to control everybody, are much more dangerous than wars of invasion or conventional wars.
Okay. What are the odds of one of those happening in Uruguay?
I just don't see it in Uruguay.
Wow.
It's a quiet farm country that standard of living of the average guy isn't high, but he's not envious because those people that live in Punta del Este are all foreigners. It's a pretty stable place, actually.
Yep. I think so too. Okay. What do you think of the future of tax havens in Europe, places like Monaco, Luxembourg, Switzerland, etc.?
I think they might not be bad, because I think that as the colors of the map on the wall start running more and more in the future, that those little tax havens are going to look better, and big countries could break up into little subdivisions, and little countries trend in the future could be towards more political freedom, assuming the Schwabians and World Economic Council people don't succeed in actually imposing a veritable police state on the world. It could go either way.
Okay, Doug, next question is, how did Doug get his big break?
Oh, I know what my big break was. It was a direct result of my having started a business where, this is way back when this was meaningful money, that I lost. I mean, my objective was to put together 50 grand, which was, let's see, in the early 70s. That's like 300,000 or something like that, 350,000, I don't know, something like that in terms of purchasing power, and finance my running around the world looking for opportunities. But I invested it in a business, which was the wrong business, and I screwed it up. It was my fault, nobody else's fault. I lost the 50 grand I had, plus 150 that I didn't have. It was a nightmare. I had to dig myself out of that hole. My big break, it was as a result of that, because I was so deep in the hole, I was way underwater. But all this time, up until the time I was about 30, which I was at that time when this happened, I'd been doing a lot of traveling. I'd get together enough money to take a trip for a week to some crazy country like Senegal or Peru or whatever, which were much more exotic in those days than they are today, I promise you.
Yeah.
I had accumulated considerable travel experience, and I've been doing a lot of reading. So I decided I got to dig myself out of this hole. I'm going to write a book that's not ever been done before. So I wrote The International Man, the complete guide to making the most of your personal freedom and financial opportunity around the world. And found a publisher, was a great publisher, exactly what I needed. And I started making a lot of money on that book, believe it or not. This was also about 1976, which was a cyclical bottom for the gold market. This is why I've always been partial to gold stocks, because they're so volatile. And when they run, they howl. And that'll happen again. So I made a lot of money on the gold stocks, which I had money from that book. And I got back into the sales game, and I was a very effective salesman. So that was my big break in the mid-70s.
The book.
Yeah, the book is really the start of the big break, I've got to say.
Yeah, and also it changed. I remember you told me a long time ago when we were going around with relating to your hobby of trying to convince third world countries to reform is that you brought with you a copy of one of your books to give to the president we were meeting with. And you said, I find that a book that you've written is the best business card. And I'd never thought about it that before, but it certainly is. And it changes people's view of you completely if you actually are a published author.
It does. They will often lose or throw away a business card. But when you give them a book with your contact information, preferably written on the flyleaf, it'll basically, nobody throws books away. Certainly not signed by the author books. It's rare that they throw them away, unless they hate you.
Unless they hate you. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next question. Does Doug think we can stop a borderless commie one world government?
Yeah. First question is, it's what Tonto said to the Lone Ranger when they were surrounded by hostile Indians. And the Lone Ranger said, what are we going to do, Tonto? He said, what do you mean we, white man?
Exactly.
Of course, that's not really true, because Tonto would have had a much worse deal than, because he would have been a turncoat and a quisling. They would have hurt him worse than the Lone Ranger if they captured him. But anyway, that's a different subject. What do we do to turn it around? Look, we can't turn it around because people that feel the way we do, okay, libertarians, ANCAPs, classical liberals, even thoughtful conservatives, listen, we're just a rounding error. We don't count for nothing. We don't have any guns. We don't have the organization. We don't have anything. So we're not going to turn it around. Forget about that. It's not going to happen. The only way it'll turn around is as the masses, like a flock of birds, these little birds that fly in flocks and all seem to work together, or a school of fish, all seem to, like Manhattan or something like that. It's when society turns around the way those fish or birds do. But we're not going to do it. I don't think we're going to do it. Yeah, sure, you can be like Lenin, what is to be done, Lenin said. And by God, with some help from the Germans, he went in there and he did it. Okay, long shot. Forget about that. What are we going to do? Maintain your personal ethics. Don't get killed or put in jail or bankrupted. And there's not much you can do, I don't think. You do what you can, but we're not going to change anything. I hate to sound defeatist, okay? Because it's not like I don't go out and try to change things myself in my own little way, mostly for my own personal amusement. But, I'm a realist. Chances of my overthrowing a government are slim and none, and slim's out of town.
Yeah, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I don't remember where that comes from exactly, but
yeah, where did that come from?
But that's kind of like our ideas. It's not their time. Maybe it'll be in the future, perhaps. Maybe that the school of fish will swim in the direction of our ideas at some point in the future, in which case I would certainly celebrate it. But until then, you got to take care of your own stuff and not worry about that stuff that's outside of your control.
Yeah. It's nice as an intellectual diversion, but beyond that.
Yep. Okay. So Ukraine situation. Someone says Russia had some recent and significant military setbacks in Ukraine with Zelensky emboldened. He is now threatening to, quote, take back Crimea by force. To what extent does Doug feel Russia could or would use a tactical nuclear weapon to prevent a total military failure in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I don't know what's going on in the Ukraine. All I know is when I read and hear, and most of it's probably lies. First casualty in warfare is always the truth. So living here in the West, we mostly hear Ukrainian lies, not Russian lies. I don't know for a fact that the Russians are losing. Personally, I don't think the Russians are going to lose. But suppose they do. They can't afford to lose. What are they going to do? And would a small, low-yield nuclear weapon do them any good? Are they going to set it off in Kiev? No, I don't think so, for a lot of reasons. Will they find a large enough concentration of Ukrainian troops that the nuclear weapon would be a game changer. I don't know if the Ukrainian army has concentration enough to make a nuclear weapon, one, worthwhile.
Hmm.
What do you think, Matt? Have you thought this out?
We talked to John Robb toward the early stages of this whole thing, and John is a brilliant military strategic thinker. His take on it was that if Russia got pushed back, where if they were losing and they got pushed back, that they would use it to draw a line in the sand and say, if you don't recognize, if you don't stop at our borders, we will continue. If they were losing, and as a matter of retreat and trying to then protect it from being something that would actually enter their borders significantly, they would use one then, just to draw a hard line in the sand. And that made sense to me then.
That's an intelligent analysis. In other words, it's not that a small nuke would solve any problems for the Russians, but it would be a serious warning that
Yes.
be taken seriously. So that's the way the nuke should and could be used, I think. Yeah, good point, Matt. Yeah, good thinking on Rob's part, too.
Yeah. If you guys don't follow John Robb at all, I would encourage you to do it. He has a website. It's Global Gorillas is what it is. And it's definitely worth read. Next question. If banks and brokerages are not a safe place to keep US dollars, is 3-month treasury bills in a treasury direct account safer?
Yeah, I'm sure it is, actually. It's all on a computer entrance, so it's not like you get a treasury bill that you can hold in your hand. But yeah, it is safer. But
Safer from the bank's liabilities and insolvency, right? That's why it would be safer.
yeah, I guess if you're going to use a bank, yeah, it's a direct obligation of the US government. So they won't default on that. Certainly not a T-bill, because these things roll over every 3 or 6 months or whatever like that. So there's no point in defaulting on a T-bill, because you can always sell another one to replace it. That's the problem with the world today, is that it's come down to where you can't trust anything. You can't trust your bank, your broker, can't trust your government. Well, you never could, but seriously, you can't now, more financially. This is one of the big problems that the world is facing today. This is what's resulting in what Matthias Desmet says is psychological mass formation.
Mm.
You don't believe in anything. You can't trust anything. So you better hook up with somebody that you kind of can trust. Maybe that'll be a new model of the German SA or the German SS or the Communist Party, you know?
Yep.
Hey, these are serious guys. If I'm part of the group, maybe I'll survive. It's not a good situation.
Yeah. I think that's almost like one of the attractions about if there's an attraction among people toward wokeism in the Democratic Party at this point, it's that they do take action. They do seem to use levers of power. And so it seems more stable in some way to people who don't believe in anything anymore. Even using the way they're using the FBI, I think completely should be illegal. If it's not, it should definitely is unethical. But like they're using them, you're using power as a tool. And that seems better in a world, if you feel like you're on their side, that seems better in a world where there's no certainty, there's no faith in any institution, no trust of even neighbors.
Yeah, it looks like they're on the winning team, and people that don't have any firm beliefs, hey, I'm going to join the winning team. So that's how they get bigger and stronger. It's a scary situation that is still deteriorating. I hate having to watch this in slow motion before my eyes. God forbid, it'll be more amusing to watch it in fast motion, because it's like watching a television series, slower than that. But it's scary watching this happen right before your eyes.
It really is. Okay. Doug, what's your opinion on the digital nomad phenomenon? You know what the digital nomad is?
Well, here's what I think a digital nomad is. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's somebody that is able to earn a living on his computer and can do it from anywhere in the world. Would that be correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. But in the case of Americans, it's pretty hard to be an effective digital nomad, because Americans have to give their government 100%, well, basically, with some exemptions, of everything they own anywhere, even if they never step back in the US. So being a digital nomad is not nearly as advantageous for an American as it is for any other nationality in the world. What do you think under these circumstances?
I understand that people are earning their money. Essentially, they're a member of the laptop class, and maybe they're project manager for a tech company that's all gone remote, and they can do it from Mexico or they can do it from anywhere. I understand the appeal of doing that for sure. I think very few of them are actually entrepreneurs. I think most of them are they're independent contractors of some kind. So they still really have a job. And I understand they're taking advantage of the arbitrage between the US dollars and the expense of living in the US and with a place like Mexico, for instance. Personally, and I've known a lot of digital nomads, I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is because I feel like these people, they basically live completely above the surface. They're in their life. They're like delaying making serious decisions about anything. One of my good friend's son was doing this, and he was doing it as an entrepreneur. So he was really building something that was good, but he was basically just moving from country to country. And this was them before times. And I met him when I was in Buenos Aires. I was just visiting there maybe 6 years ago. And we met for dinner there because it was, again, the son of a good friend of mine. And I basically shit on digital nomads with him the entire time because I was like, what you're doing, you could do so much better. You think you're doing this, you're meeting new people all the time. He's basically hooking up with people on Tinder internationally. It's kind of what he's doing. You build no meaningful relationships doing this. You don't know anybody. You go from basically hostile to hostile. It seems like a boring existence as one could find. It's almost like being a cubicle dweller, except for you constantly have to make travel arrangements. To me, it sounded terrible. So anyway, I talked him out of it and he stopped doing it and his business really blossomed after it. And he got married and he just had a son that was born and he's doing fantastic. He's making a life instead of skirting on the surface of things, which I think is a big mistake for people to make personally. I think you have a period of time where you have to check things out, understand the world, but you're not building anything when you're doing that. You're basically just living as a tourist. The other thing I think about it is that a vast majority of these people are going to lose their jobs. As the economy collapses, they're going to be broke and they're going to be in real trouble. So enjoy it while you can. The laptop class is dramatically overstaffed at every business everywhere, and they're going to be laying a lot of them off. So if you're earning your money that way, you ain't doing web design or doing marketing for people or something like that, prepare to lose your job because it will happen.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Matt. I hadn't quite thought of it quite that way, but I think you're absolutely right. If you're a digital nomad, you lack any semblance of stability in your life, really. I
Right.
mean,
But you can delude yourself into thinking that you're living a rich life because there's lots of social interaction. There's excitement that's around you because you're going to new places and you feel free. And you are free. You're free from constraints, but constraints aren't necessarily bad.
yeah, there's something else too. It's that if you're living on a laptop, chances are you're not producing anything tangible. You're just producing digits and opinions. And it's not like you're making something. It seems rather ephemeral to me, the product.
It is. Well, and most of my success as an entrepreneur has come from those types of things myself, from things that are digital. That's one of the things, one of the really compelling things about this farm, although I don't expect to make nearly as much money as I did in the other things I did, maybe not make money at all, but I can look around and I can see the fruits of my labor. Like I can see them in a tangible physical form, that my environment gets better every day, that I'm doing stuff that has a clear meaning every day. It's much more satisfying. Physical world is the world I want to live in. And I think everyone actually at some point in the future, people are going to have a choice. I think a big part of the population is going to go into the pod. They're just going to take their digital life to a new level. They're going to be in it in a much deeper way a lot more of the time. And there are going to be others, probably very few, who decide not for me. And I'm going to stay in the physical world where life is harder. It's much less satiating, but it's important for me at least.
Yeah. I buy that argument. I completely agree with you. Being a digital nomad, it's a phantasm, and it could vanish like a phantasm does.
Fantastic. Okay, Doug, what's your opinion of the Freemasons?
I don't know enough about them. We've talked about them off air.
But yeah,
Frankly, I'm sure I know lots of Freemasons, but I don't know that they're Freemasons because I'm not a Freemason. So I don't know that I'd like to find out more. I hear all kinds of different opinions and good, bad, and indifferent about them. Don't know.
Don't either. I don't know that I know them either. Yeah. I wish I did know for sure because I have questions. I'd like to ask some
Yeah,
questions.
lots of questions. I do know one guy, an old friend of mine. I rode the rails with him once, and he was a young guy, smart, very smart. He had a connection, indirect, to the Freemasons, and he said, "I'm going to join them because I'm a young guy. These guys have lots of money. They're all old guys, and there's an opportunity here for me to move myself into a position of wealth and power. And I've got to get back in touch with Art and see how that's gone. I'm sure at this point he can tell me a lot about it. He's mercenary enough that I think he might break the seal
Of secrecy. Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Or he might not. I don't know. Who knows? But I'd like to find out more. Yeah, I believe there are lots of books written about the Masons, but this could be from authors that have an axe to grind. I have no idea, really. I'd like to find out.
Yeah. Be nice to know. Okay. Where is the best place to live in Uruguay?
Go and find out. That's the answer.
Yes. Exactly. There's not that many options. So just go. There's a lot of different places you live, obviously, but I'm saying there's like a few key areas. This is a huge part of the country is basically the population density is so small that you probably wouldn't want to live in that area. I'm guessing like the north, you probably wouldn't want to live there, but go visit. That's the best way to do it. Okay. Doug, what books are you reading at the moment? You mentioned one about World War One the other day, which I didn't write down.
Yeah, and this is a crazy thing. I had that book here in my living room. I'm in this big house just with my wife. The book's in the living room, and it's disappeared. I'm looking for it. So I did some research. The book I'm reading called No Man's Land, and it's by John Toland. It's an analysis of what happened in the last year of World War One, which has always been kind of interesting to me because the thing that, and having lost the book somehow in this house, did the maids steal it? No, the maids were, where the hell did it go? Anyway, I'll find the book again because I'm just getting up to the part where here we are in World War One, the Allies and the Americans were always on the Allied side, but during World War One, they called themselves the Central Powers or whatever. They had beaten the Russians. They had a 2 million man army on the Russian front, and they were moving it to the Western front now. And it seemed like they would overwhelm the British and the French, who were just about as starving and badly beaten up as they were. But now the Germans had 2 million extra men materializing. That was happening. But then the Americans, who had declared war earlier, started shipping hundreds of thousands of troops over there. And it's said that it was the American intervention in World War One. And I'm just getting to this part of the book when I lost my book.
Can't find it.
Yeah, anyway. So why did the Germans lose World War II when it seemed like they were just at the edge of winning it? And of course, this is where the Nazis later on said, well, we were stabbed in the back and all of that. So I want to see what Toland has to say about this whole thing and why the Germans got such a bad shake afterwards and so forth. It's a very interesting subject. So anyway, reading that one, halfway through it, I'm reading one that I read a really good book review on it. It's called The Swerve by a guy named Stephen Greenblatt.
Yes.
Stephen Greenblatt. And it is an analysis of how the Renaissance started. And it's really well written. The guy's a real scholar, but he's a very engaging writer. And he's talking about all the things that are going on in the 1300s and 1400s and 1500s. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through that. I recommend that highly because it's lots of little side excursions into the classical world and the importance of Lucretius and his book on the nature of things being found by kind of the central character whose name is Poggio, who's going to obscure monasteries around Europe, finding manuscripts, old manuscripts that nobody had read for hundreds of years. It's really quite an interesting book. So I'm reading The Swerve. Still haven't figured out why he came up with that
Swerve.
title, which
Strange.
seems like a crazy title, but the book is great. Doing that, I'm almost through with a book by a medieval scholar named Tom Shippey. He's British. Guy's really good. He did a course for the teaching company, which is a great course, really entertaining and interesting. And this book is called Laughing I Shall Die. It's a history of the great Vikings. It's very interesting with all kinds of side excursions into what happened during the Dark Ages after the collapse of Rome, starting in the 500s, going up to the 1200s, when most of the sagas, the Eddas were written. It's interesting because what we know about the Vikings and who they were and what they did is kind of here and there and often unreliable, mythical. So in this book, Shippey is very reasonably and rationally and putting together what actually happened in this period of time centering around the Vikings. Really an interesting book. And he goes into all kinds of things, including an analysis of that series that was on television,
Vikings.
The Vikings, which I always liked a lot. And he likes it too, actually.
Yeah.
He starts off with the early representations of the Vikings, like the Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis movie in the 50s, which I saw as a kid, other things like that. He looks at it from the point of view of a very hip scholar. So depends on how interested you are in the Vikings, but they're having a little renaissance now. So
They really are, at least in fiction. I think the former states that used to, the Vikings came from, seem to not be functioning that well these days. What we were talking about before this started, that I saw this stat with the largest Danish pension fund lost 36% or something like that in the first half of 2022. And then Sweden with all their immigration problems. Norway is a kind of a disaster in another way. So the Vikings are not really flourishing. The Viking heart is not alive in the Scandinavian people in the same way it used to be.
no, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, if the Vikings of those days looked at their descendants today, they would slay them all in an
Exactly.
afternoon in disgust.
I think you're right. Okay. A couple more questions and we're done. So this person says, I have a house in rural New England. It's a blue state, not New Hampshire. A wife, 4 kids. They work from home. They have a private well and septic. They have some crypto, precious metals, including lead, fifths of liquor, chickens, bunnies, and lots of hardware and tools. Says, I've got some cash and I want to get out of the bank. Should I shore up my weak spots here by getting a wood stove, building a barn, and strengthening my investment, or fly to Uruguay and find a cheap property?
Mhm. Well, by all means, fly to Uruguay and take a vacation, 3 weeks, rent a car, drive around everywhere, try to meet as many people as you can, foreigners that are living there and Uruguayans. Presumably you don't speak Spanish, but find an Uruguayan that speaks English, which would be the upper classes. So do that. It'll help answer the question, but it sounds like you're pretty well set where you are. So can't answer the question, except get on a plane, spend 3 weeks driving around the country, and then come back to me and let's talk about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. This goes back to the analysis paralysis question. It's like the idea of Uruguay is this vague notion. If he had more information that he personally would spend a couple weeks in Uruguay, the answer, I'm sure, would be obvious to him. I don't think it'd be a tough choice. I think it'd be obvious. He'd know, I know this way or that way would be better for me.
Yeah, I think you're looking in the right part of the world. And maybe, just maybe, I mean, you'll find it interesting enough that maybe I should go back and spend 3 weeks just across the Uruguayan border in Brazil. See how I like that. That could be interesting. Or just go across the Plate River and do the same thing for Argentina, which, for all its problems, is a nice place to live at the moment, even though the government's clinically insane. But that's true of almost every government, although the Uruguayan government is actually pretty mellow. But, you
Yeah.
know, as stupid as the human chimpanzee is. That could change totally at the next election. What, 3 years? I don't know when it is.
Yep, could change. Well, a little bit of proof that I think Uruguay is more sober or more handling things than better than most countries. I shared with you yesterday, Doug, how the Uruguayan peso had had gone up in relation to the dollar by 10%. So while the dollar is beating basically almost every other currency in the world, I think it's just the Russian ruble is the only one that it's not ahead of that I've seen in the major headlines. It turns out the Uruguayan peso is crushing the US dollar and it's 25% up compared to the euro, 25% over the euro. It's insane.
That's like good news, bad news, depending on which end of what you're going to do in Uruguay if you go down there. And what did you say? I haven't followed, because all I do in Uruguay is just pay bills. So I'm sure my bills are going to be, I'll find they've gone up a lot. But what is it? The banks are paying 10%
The
in Uruguay
yeah,
bills now?
the central bank's interest rate is 10.25%.
Well, I don't know what the retail customer is getting these days, but you
Yeah, I
can
don't
buy
know
an
either.
Uruguayan government bond and I guess get 10% while the currency is going up. Whether that moves over or not, I don't know. But
It's interesting. I mean, well, it's
just
nothing
can't
compared
watch
to
all the market. Yeah,
so good.
you can't watch all the markets all the time. This happened right under my nose. I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And but of course, interest rates are relative because you have 75% interest rates right now in Argentina.
Yeah, yeah, and even though it's gone up with the dollar losing value at 15% per year, even though it's going up against other currencies, it's actually going down relative to other things. So you're not really making money, even though you think you're making money on the Uruguayan peso.
Nope. Nope. Inflation is real everywhere at this point. Prices are going up everywhere. But still, it shows better stewardship of the currency, at least, than most countries are having right now. So I was happy to see that.
It's true. And the good thing is the average Uruguayan is not being wiped out and bankrupted the way the average person in, well, Argentina for that matter is right now.
Right. Because the currency stuff and the average person in the US, because they're basically they're in so much debt, so overwhelmed with consumer credit, student loans, car loans, mortgages, and everything, that consumer debt cycle is not impacted Uruguay in the same way. It's just not available here in the same way.
No, no, there's really no debt to speak of in Uruguay.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, Doug. What do you think will break first in the financial system? So far, things are strained, but nothing has completely broken as of yet. So, what will be the first thing?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I know that all these bed bugs populating the Eccles building in Washington at the Federal Reserve are running around trying to stick their fingers in the dike when it looks like it's leaking. Will it be the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market? They're going to try to maintain the financial system somehow. I don't know what's going to break first, but it will break at some point. I'll put my money on the bond market. But then again, maybe I should put my money on the stock market because there are so many crap businesses that are either over indebted or even if they're not over indebted are hemorrhaging money and won't be able to raise more. I don't know what it's going to be. Do you have a guess?
I don't. Certainly, you're the expert on this. But when you say the bond market, the stock market, I assume you're talking about the U.S. bond market and the U.S. stock market. And because what I wonder is if there's going to be some global contagion that does not start first in the U.S., but then a Lehman, like an international Lehman of some kind. With China, we see these different things. I shared a statistic with you before we started that the VAT, which is a tax that on everything you buy in Beijing, has collected 43% less revenue than it did in the prior year. That means that basically the economic activity has slowed in Beijing by 43%. That's shocking and dangerous. That's not a recession. That's a depression.
Yes, especially since all these Chinese banks are notorious for having made loans for political reasons, which means that a lot of those loans are going to die and go to money heaven. What are they going to do? Are they going to print up trillions of new yuan? Or is Mrs. Wong going to be really unhappy when she goes to get her money and it's not there? Yeah, it could easily start in China. Everything else is made in China. Why not the Greater Depression?
There's also something I saw about Japan. The currency's lost a lot of value. And of course, they've been printing money for, I don't know, is it 15 or 20 years, 25 years? They've been printing money there basically. But just something they were having trouble maintaining the currency. They were running out of foreign reserves to buy with. So people have talked about a problem in Japan since the financial crisis. It could start there and really spread, but maybe now it's different. I don't know.
Or maybe it'll be someplace. I mean, everybody uses this term black swan, but they use it improperly because a black swan is something that it might happen. It's something that you don't even have a clue that it even exists. And it turns out to be the real problem.
Yeah.
Someplace we're not even thinking about.
Probably that. Because honestly, when you see these crises emerging, the authorities, they can put their finger in the dike, just like when you start to see this rout in junk bonds and the Fed started buying it, which they're not supposed to do, but they did it.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things can happen. If you can't anticipate, it's when they can't stop it. They can't do anything.
Yeah. So we don't know where it'll actually blow up. And you're right. If they can see things coming unglued in those places, lots of fingers are going to go into the dike so that someplace we don't know about and can't know about.
Right. But if anyone has any ideas about where it might take place, I'd love to see them in the comments because I'd love to hear people's thoughts.
Absolutely. Keep those cards and letters coming.
Yes, exactly. Okay. All right. We'll leave it there, Doug. Thank you very much.
Okay, Matt. Have a good weekend, huh?
Yeah, you too.